one of my favorite stories in my book. It's 1950. My father's 18 years old. He comes of age in Detroit. My grandfather, sweet, soft-spoken man from the South, he tells my dad, stay in your lane, there's less traffic, get one of them good jobs at Chrysler or Ford. My father looked at his friends getting on the assembly line at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, coming home exhausted with barely enough of a paycheck to put a decent meal on the table. And Daddy said, that's not my future. He was a budding drummer. He packed his van with his dreams and his drums. He left Detroit, came to Seattle, and he got busy. He lied about his age, and he started playing in Seattle's vibrant jazz clubs. That's the music side. My father was an amazing drummer. He played with everybody from Dizzy Gillespie to Duke Ellington. My parents had a nightclub here in Seattle called the Pink Pussycat. And I mean, Ike and Tina Turner, all these great, I mean, as a child, I grew up with Little Richard staying at our house and all this amazing jazz people. And so my father decided one night on a break, he met a guy that had a home for sale not too far from the University of Washington, where my father was also taking classes. And he struck a deal to work off teaching the guy's son drums and painting for him and doing his gardening, whatever it took to get this house.
We have another writer with us today, and it's an interesting story. Her background comes from music and real estate. She puts it together now, building that authority figure status she already has. She put out her book, Get Up and Get On It, a Black entrepreneur's lessons on creating legacy and wealth. I'm excited to learn all about what went on behind the scenes of this book, as well as all about the book, and we're about to do that here. Dana, thank you so much for joining the show.
Vincent, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and I loved the preview that I got before she came on, and really great background. Niece of Quincy Jones, won 28 Grammy Awards, so that's where her music inspiration comes. Her father's side, long history of jazz drumming, and then turned into a successful real estate investor. So on the professional side, she combines the best of those worlds. But for today, we're learning all about this book. She has a copy with her, so I'm going to have to ask you to hold it up so everyone can see. Let's talk about something that we don't always dive into at first. Choosing a cover. When you were choosing that cover, what was going through your mind? Colors, design, tell us about it.
So much. That was one of the hardest parts, Vincent, was really coming up with something that was going to jump off. I wanted vibrant colors. As a nod to my University of Washington Husky roots, I like the purple and the gold.
Love that.
My uncle's color purple, purple means royalty and richness. So the colors were real important to me. I also like the sun kind of rising for the get up and get on it sign. And yeah, I just, we played around with a lot of different possible themes, but this one just resonated.
It looks great. And I have my color is yellow in my company logo, all my books and my podcast. My grandma's favorite color was yellow. So I have a strong color there as well. We saw the cover. Now let's talk about the motivation behind the book. Did you always want to write the book? Was this a new idea?
I've been a writer since I can remember. I got my first diary when I was 9 years old, and I kind of OCD, so I wrote in it every night.
Right.
And when my dad passed away 28 years ago this month, I was really, as a way of trying to memorialize him for my children, I started writing our family story. And I wrote it more as a memoir. And so my son, who's now 30, and he's the fourth generation taking over this business that my father and mother started, my son said, Mom, this is such a great story. You really need to share it with the world. So I connected with Wiley, and they said, look, this is great, but business books are what we really need. So I spent about a year rewriting it from it's more of a historical, but there's still a lot of stories in the book. And yeah, so it's been a wonderful, wonderful process, and I'm just so thrilled with how well it's been received.
Well, thank you for sharing the time that goes into a book as well. It is not easy to not only start a book, but finish a book. You mentioned a year of rewrites. What was that like?
It was really interesting trying to decide what would stay in the book, what was pertinent. Right now there was so much information. I really start the book off talking about what it means to be a fire starter. And that's really the message that I want to get across, is that you can change the narrative despite what your birth circumstance dictated. And, so I really wanted to hone in on that message. And so I love to write poetry as well. So I call it an unconventional business book. Each chapter starts with a poem. And then
You have to
I
give us
go
one
into
of those
the story.
poems, though. You got to give us one of the poems.
Okay, a fire starter. That's chapter one. A fire starter is born with passion, drive, and vision. They don't accept the narrative at birth which they were given. The life of living paycheck to paycheck and barely getting by, waiting to collect Social Security when their time comes to die. Firestarter's ambition is much greater than settling for less and joining the masses. I witness his tenacity, grit, and grind from behind my father's glasses. My mama's DNA is a gumbo of beauty, class. She's wise, determined, and strong. My parents are my best teachers, giving lessons I was blessed to receive and now blessed to pass along. Success only comes before work in the dictionary. If you don't try, you have no one else to blame. At the end of your journey, what will be your legacy and how bright will be your flame?
Wow, well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did you like poetry as a kid? I'm just curious.
I did. I've always loved rhyming words. I mean, I was rapping before rap came out.
Well, as I mentioned beforehand, everyone, she has some music love, some real estate love. We're going to get her on that entrepreneur show to talk about the family business. Now, there's so many questions on my mind, but we're going to save it for that show. As far as this book, who would you say your target reader is? If there's anyone out here who can get the most value?
It is really, it's Damon John from Shark Tank wrote the foreword. And he was like the perfect example for me of someone that changed the narrative, and I'm just like, it's really for anybody that says, hey, I can either spend my life working for someone else, building their dream, or work for myself and build my own dream. And I give real simple tools. I've come up with this acronym called REAL. The R is research. That's the foundation of any successful business. The E, expand your network. That's the most powerful tool in my treasure trove, is connecting with people. Every day you should connect with someone that you don't know. A, amplifying injustice. And L, leverage. Leverage with the network that you've expanded in, and leverage with your banker. And, so I'm like, and I break down this concept more in the book on how that's worked in our lives and how people can still use these timeless tools to create their own legacy.
I love it. When was the release date on this?
June 19th.
So it's fresh, brand new.
Brand new. We've already hit USA Today bestseller, Barnes and Noble bestseller, Amazon bestseller, and it's really resonating. I'm thrilled.
Congratulations on the success. Now I want to ask a little more about the writing process. What were some of the more challenging parts of the process to help some other viewers on today that are in this struggle too?
Just keep up with it. Don't stop. For me, I write whenever it hits me. I keep a notepad next to my bed. If I wake up in the middle of the night with an idea, flick on the light, there it goes down. And I mean, I think that, just put it out there. There were so many moments where chapters would be like, oh, this goes better here, and the rewrite process, and it's marinating a fabulous meal. And once you get the ingredients right, it's, chow time.
That's one of the things I tell my clients too, where don't be so concerned with where things are right now. You can always move them. You probably will move them. That itty bitty committee in our head is going to be talking, especially during the end of the
Absolutely. I mean, there's a section in my book where, it was a painful thing to write, even when I do speaking topics, about how my parents went through a divorce after 32 years. And the opening scene is I've sided with my mom, and I come in the courtroom and I see the back of my father's head. And, it was like really painful. And the editors felt that should be the opening chapter. And I'm like, you know what? That's really dark, and that's a painful part. I wanted to start off on more of a positive note. So I made it more chronological, and I just had to push back. But at the end of the day, you have to really go with what feels best to you.
Yep. And only you'll be able to decide that. Go with your gut. All writers, you can get advice from great people, but you still have to know what's best for the book. Do we see another book coming out after this one, or tell us what's next for you?
Oh, I have to say, when I was knee deep in it, I was like, this is one and done. But I am enjoying myself so much with this process and the fact that I can use this platform to reach so many people. I mean, when I go on my Amazon reviews and see the positive things that people are saying, I'm just like, yes. I mean, that's my legacy. And so, yeah, I think there's another book in me.
I can't wait to hear all about it. But as far as this one, it is out everywhere. The value is there. I would now like to ask a little more about, I know we have poetry, but does the rest flow into a conversational piece, or what is the rest of the book like after the opening poetry?
After open poetry, the poetry alludes to what the chapter is going to be about. And then at the end of each chapter, I have a section called Get Up and Get On It. And they're just actual actionable steps that each person can take based on the advice I gave in that chapter. It's for people that want to get in real estate. These are programs that'll help you. This Saturday, I'm doing a speaking engagement at our Northwest African American Museum. And it's a brand new program here in Seattle called the Covenant Housing Program that offers zero down, 0% interest to first time Black homeowners that have roots in Seattle since 1968. And there's so much information out there that people aren't taking advantage of and accessing. And it's that old adage, those who know have the edge. Knowledge is power. So each chapter, and I have fun with it. I just really share a lot of my personal life experiences, and from dating professional athletes and how they've lost money. Cash erodes, equity grows. That's a resounding theme. And things that you can do as a housing provider in my business. I meet with residents every day who are young, right out of college, who already have ruined their credit. There's things that you can do to prepare for your future. My father was a very funny man. And he always told me one thing, just because it's on your ass doesn't make it an asset. So I say, there's going to be a time for all of those nice trinkets that we all want, but invest now. So there will come a time when you can have all of that.
So your book offers great tips like this, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Different programs for home ownership and what you can do to get your credit in line and, just how to navigate and negotiate in the business world.
Well, I think it's great how you're putting that information out there, giving people access to some of the information that took you some years to acquire. I'm sure in some case that's always great. I do want to, I know this isn't exactly writing related, but I am curious. I know you said it's a third or fourth generation family business with the real estate. Do you know anything about the initial sale or the first purchase, like number
Oh,
one?
one of my favorite stories in my book. It's 1950. My father's 18 years old. He comes of age in Detroit. My grandfather, sweet, soft-spoken man from the South, he tells my dad, stay in your lane, there's less traffic, get one of them good jobs at Chrysler or Ford. My father looked at his friends getting on the assembly line at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, coming home exhausted with barely enough of a paycheck to put a decent meal on the table. And Daddy said, that's not my future. He was a budding drummer. He packed his van with his dreams and his drums. He left Detroit, came to Seattle, and he got busy. He lied about his age and he started playing in Seattle's vibrant jazz clubs. That's the music side. My father was an amazing drummer. He played with everybody from Dizzy Gillespie to Duke Ellington. My parents had a nightclub here in Seattle called the Pink Pussycat. And I mean, Ike and Tina Turner, all these great, I mean, as a child, I grew up with Little Richard staying at our house and all this amazing jazz people. And so my father decided one night on a break, he met a guy that had a home for sale not too far from the University of Washington, where my father was also taking classes. And he struck a deal to work off teaching the guy's son drums and painting for him and doing his gardening, whatever it took to get this house. Then he subdivided the house long before Airbnb was even thought of. And in order to make the $48 monthly payment, he rented out all the nooks and crannies to his fellow students. And that was the first house that my parents purchased in 1950. In 1954, actually, when my parents got married, the amazing feat is they purchased a property every year for 19 years without any bank funding until Black-owned Liberty Bank gave them their first loan in 1969. So, the history was just rich and they found partners that were bankable when they couldn't get loans, and then they'd refinance and buy their partners out. And that's all a part of what I talk about, expanding your network. But I love the story that my parents, who started with zero, my mother comes from a woman that was a lifelong domestic, a fancy word for a maid, and my grandfather, who was a carpenter, and my father, whose mother died when he was 17, and his father worked at Detroit Edison, and their improbable decision has changed three generations, and I'm going to have my first grandchild in October, so now it's going to be the fourth generation. Thank you. So it's the only business that we've ever known. It's the only way that our family's eaten. It's provided college educations, vacation homes, everything. And I love sharing the story because I just think it gives inspiration for all.
Well, thank you for sharing. And as you said, that's also a piece of the book. So you're going to have to go out there and get the book. Before I find out where we can find this book online and more about you, is there anything else about the book you want to touch on before we go?
I have two kids. As I said, I've got a grandbaby on the way, and I feel like this book is like my third offspring. I mean, it's just a huge piece of me, and I'm just so happy that I've been able to share it and just inspire people. I've been traveling around. I was in Kentucky, I was in Chicago, and this message just resonates with hope. And when people call me back and they go, "Wow, you really inspired me to make this change." That's what it's all about. I mean, as a housing provider, I love renting. That's my business. But my happiest days are when residents come and say, "Hey, I'm buying a house."
Well, I love that. I'm glad you found your passion. Everyone out there, she's about to tell you where we can find the book online. Where is that?
So it is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, all major bookstores, as well as my website, therealdanafrank.com. And yeah, my Facebook is Dana Frank. Instagram is The Real Dana Frank. All of those locations you can find me.
Thank you for sharing that, everyone. Be sure to go check out this book now. And this is Writing with Authors. We were back with other great guests today, and Dana, and I will work hard to keep pumping out great authors to inspire you and add a book to your queue. I am at Vincent A. Lanci on all social media and YouTube, and my website is vincentalanci.com. Thank you for stopping by, and we'll see you soon. Dana, thanks again.
So appreciated, Vincent. Thank you.